restart. Restart and pause the recording.
Welcome everyone to the PGT to PGR information session. If you're interested in doing a PhD next year, maybe the next year after, then this is all the information and all the people that can give that information to you. So just for a little bit of housekeeping rules, and sorry, I'll introduce myself first actually. My name is Michelle Craig and I work for the MVLS Graduate School, and I'm your host today along with my colleague Sarah McQueen. So we'll be on hand just to answer any questions for you as well. So first of all, we have a question and answer box at the bottom of the screen. That is for any questions that you want answered at the end of the session. So wait until all the panelists have actually done their talks, because you might actually find that the information they give might answer your question before you put anything in here just now. Keep the Q&A box, keep the chat box to the right hand side, keep that empty, because Sarah and I are going to use that for any links, any information for you, which will be most helpful to you as well. So without further ado, the first person we have is Professor George Baillie. And he's going to explain basically what a supervisor is going to look for in a PhD student. So George, if you would like to kick us off.
Yes, thank you very much indeed. Well, welcome to this session. I'm Dean of Graduate Studies for the college, and as a top 100 university, you'll know that a PhD from here is worth its weight in gold. So you've come to the right place, and welcome. I'm glad so many people have agreed to attend this session. I've only got 10 minutes, I'm afraid. I'd like to wax lyrical about how great we are. You probably already know the stats about Glasgow University. Our graduate school in particular has a really good, what we call submission rate. So we get PhD students through with a really high success rate in the allotted time. So you're in the right place. I'm going to talk to you about two things: what a PhD is and what supervisors are looking for in a PhD candidate. First of all, I was thinking about this last night. My kids actually pointed to a big lot of black books that are on a shelf in my office and work, and these are PhD theses. And my kids were asking, what are those books? And I said, well, they're passports. And the kids were like, they're not passports, they're too big to be passports. But actually, that's what a PhD is. It's two things: it's a passport and it's a training course. It's a passport because it allows you to go anywhere you want in the world, basically. Think about if you didn't have a passport, you could only stay in a small space. You couldn't go anywhere. With a PhD, you can go anywhere and you can do anything. And that's my experience. So think about it like that. You know, take for instance the COVID virus, the vaccine that's just been produced. That was produced by a guy who was an immigrant into Germany who arrived with no socks and shoes on. And he got his PhD and he's now developed a vaccine that's going to save us from this virus. So that's the sort of thing I'm talking about. A PhD is a transformative training course. It's a training course because you're not only there to learn how to do science, you're also there to learn a whole new range of skills that will help you progress your career, whether it be in science or not. You know, our PhD students do many different jobs when they're finished. Some of them go into research, some of them go into patent law, some of them go into merchant banking. But the range of skills, both scientific and non-scientific, that you'll gain with us will propel you. You know, you'll put the afterburners on after you leave here, and your life will take off. And that's what a PhD will do for you. So it's a training course, and it's also a passport to great things. So what are we looking for? What do supervisors look for in a PhD student? I was thinking about that last night, and actually it's the letters of the alphabet. It's B, C, D, E, and F, and I couldn't think about one beginning with A, so I just went with it. The first one is B, is belief. You know, you're going to get either a really good master's degree or you're going to come out your undergraduate degree with a top quality qualification. And to take the next step, you need to believe that you can do a PhD. And that's one of the biggest challenges of a PhD student, is actually believing in yourself. Imposter syndrome No, if you get a great degree or a great master's, then you are exactly who we're looking for. It's you are the future, so you need to believe that, and we'll help you develop your skills so that you are the future. Secondly, commitment. A PhD is a journey. It's a journey that requires a lot of commitment. There's ups and downs, and you're going to hear from some of the PhD candidates that have come out of the masters, and that there's so many ups and downs in a PhD, highs and lows. But you need commitment just to stick with it, because no one gets anywhere just by having successes. You don't learn if you just have successes all the time. So we need commitment to go on your topsy-turvy PhD journey. D is drive. You need to drive your project. You come in, you'll not know much about it, but over the years you'll learn more and more, and you need to drive yourself to become the expert in that small thing. Enthusiasm, that's another thing. You need the boundless enthusiasm. You need to choose a subject that's going to get you out of your bed every morning. Now, for me, back in the day when I did my PhD, that was G protein coupled receptors, because G proteins, the Nobel Prize had just been awarded for G proteins, and I was mad about G proteins. So that's what I did my PhD in. And at the time I was a technician, but the PhD became my passport. And then I worked my way up from technician to postdoc to lecturer, senior lecturer, professor, and now I'm the dean. And it's only because I had a PhD. That is my passport. And F is focus. So what you're going to do is you're going to come in, you're going to work with a great team of people, and you're going to know more and more about less and less as you go forward. So in the end, actually, you'll know more about your subject than your supervisor will. Hard for you to believe that right now, but that's what happens. You're going to hear from one of my PhD students, Joyce, later on, and she now knows more about G protein coupled receptors than I do. And that's the way it should be. And I'm delighted that she does. So those are the things that we're looking for. I'm going to say a couple more minutes. I'm going to say what you should be looking for when you rock up for your PhD. Well, we're committed to providing you with a world-class research environment, and we're committed to giving you an environment which is respectful and which will help you grow. You should be looking for a subject area that really excites you, and you should be looking for a group that can provide you with a world-class experience, that has collaborations with other groups, that has top-class equipment. And these are the things that you're likely to get at Glasgow University, because our college is the biggest college in the university. We've got 2,500 researchers. It's amazing. We've got, almost half of those are PhD students. So the PhD student research community in our college drives the research of the college. So you want to be part of that, because if you have a look, we're voted the number one university in the UK recently. And it's because in part of our outputs, i.e. the way that we communicate the science we do to the outside world. So if you can get in here and be part of that, we're going to train you, we're going to give you a nurturing environment so that you can go on and be an ambassador for us. We want you to come out the other end completely skilled and ready to change the world. And that reflects greatly on you, and it reflects greatly on us. So that's the ethos from the graduate school. I'm going to take some questions at the end. I'm going to stay to the end because I'm dying to hear what our PhD students are going to say. I haven't seen their presentations. I'm a bit nervous, but I'm sure it'll be good. So I think that's my time. So
Thank you, George.
I'm going to pass you back.
Yeah, thank you, George. That was really interesting. So our next speaker we've got on is Mrs. Hazel Cadenhead, and she is the Office Manager for the PhD department in the MDLS Graduate School. So Hazel, if you want to say your your chat.
Don't know if you can see the screen, share the screen. Is that
Yep, that's
okay?
coming up.
Can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's fine. Well, just wanted to say hello and welcome, and just to say that though Professor Baillie was speaking about the benefits of getting a PhD, and I want to just say that throughout the PhD, you're going to be a part of a large cohort of other students, and we have a lot of experience in dealing with students and handling students, so that you will be well supported throughout your journey. One of the first things we want to say that we want to stable connection here. Oh, go that one. apologies for that, that more than anything else, we want you to pass. And you'll get every support, because that's what we want. We want students to come to the university, and we want them to have a successful career at the end of the time. So if you join us to do a PhD, we want to pass. We have an over 90% completion rate, which, as Professor Baillie says, is very high. Now you're probably thinking, well, that's 10% that haven't passed. But a lot of this is a 4-year degree. So we have people who, through this studies, think, no, this isn't for me. We have others who decide it's too long, they want to go home, maybe to their home country. They've got maybe domestic pressures, family illnesses can happen. Some people want to go and get married. They want to stay on and do it. They might transfer to another university and carry on to another university. So there are very few people when they start the PhD that don't succeed if they want to succeed. The people that move on are often, they've made the choice to move on, to go because of these outside and external pressures. So I just wanted to say that if you join us today, that you have a very good chance in 4 years' time of having the name doctor in front of the initials doctor in front of your name. Throughout your PhD, you'll get a lot of support. There's a support structure, and I want to say that as well. It's a completely different degree from your undergraduate or any postgraduate taught elements. This time you're off doing a research degree, but there's a lot of support throughout that time. So though at the moment you don't quite know how you're going to do this, don't worry, you will be guided right throughout your degree. There will be supervisors. You will have 2 supervisors at least that you will meet with probably every week. There'll be planning of your degree right from the beginning. What's your research project, how you'll plan it over the next few years. This will be recorded in detail. One of the main things you'll do throughout your degree is you'll record almost every day a diary of your research. You'll get reviews. The first year you get a review within 3 or 4 months. After that, every year you get an annual review. If you don't progress from that annual review, you do not go forward. So the supervisors will guide you up to that point. There's a lot of training that goes on as well, though it's not formal courses like your MSc. It's training in interdisciplinary skills that will help you get a career later on when you leave here. Things like presentation skills, but it will also be training in skills you might need for your PhD, such as statistics and other types of sort of things to help you with any skills you think I need support in to do my research. And at the end of the time, you then submit a thesis, which goes through an examination process, and you'll hear more about that in detail. So at the start of your degree, just to say, you get 4 years if you're doing a PhD, and it's all laid out what you would expect to do in year 1, year 2, and year 3. So it's not a free-for-all, it's quite structured within that wider subject area. I mentioned the reviews before that. And the training. I don't go into too much detail in the training, but we have a handbook of training. You can do external courses beyond the university as well. And so that's all part of the degree. Also want to say that within the university, there is a large support structure. The university has been established a very long time. So everything from the examinations, how they're set, what qualifies to be part of a good research subject, everything is sort of set out and structured. So coming from the Senate all the way down, we have a board of, it's called the Graduate School Board, that oversees all the examinations, oversees all the subjects, oversees the structure to make sure that you really are getting a very professional degree. It is up to the standard that the university is scrutinized to make sure that it gives a degree of a high standard, that it merits the rating that it has. Beyond that sort of scrutiny level and the sort of almost political policy level, where you get all the regulations set down, and if you join us, you'll find all the regulations and handbooks, so you can see what you're expected to do, what your supervisor expected to deliver. Just want to say that it's all very structured. There is a raft of, in each institute school, there's a PGR convener who has an overarching view of all research students within the institute or school, so that if you have any problems with your supervisors, you can go to them, and they're experts in the area. And so you've got your own supervisors, and then you have these institutional experts, and then they can refer things on upward to the Senate or whatever if there's any problems. Again, at a more local level, you have your supervisors, as I mentioned, who will oversee your actual degree, but you will also have 2 reviewers who keep an eye on that what your supervisors are doing and what you're doing as well. So you have this 2 or more supervisors, but again, that 2 reviewers who again keep an eye on you to make sure that your research is going on track, that you're being supported, that you're going to get your degree and your thesis written on time. And just finally, I think I want to say that I'm just speaking about the conveners. If the problems do occur, which is one of the things a lot of students worry about because they think it's a long time, they're worried about financial things, and again, worried about what might happen if there's problems back home, that there is a lot of support in the university for students. The graduate school has a huge amount of experience in helping students with any problems. We have, as I say, got about 1,000 students at the moment. Each year, about 150 new students join us. So that if you have any problems, whether it be with visas, with your family, with support, with medical issues, we can help you, not maybe ourselves, but point you in the right direction of whether it's the international office, the counselling services, the medical facilities that are around to help you. And if you do find that you have a problem, that you need to go home, that the university can look to give you a suspension of studies, so you can have a break and come back. That would, all at the time. So again, if you feel you're here and you think, I don't know, I can manage for 4 years, just realize the university is very, very supportive in that direction in helping you should you be any time you need to get off for a medical issue or a domestic problem, and they can come back and resume your studies, as long as that fits in with the project and everything else and your sponsor and various other people. But there's a lot of people that, because it is a 4-year degree, need some help or support at some point during that time. And don't be ever frightened to ask for that support as you're going through your 4 years with us. And I've just finally put up here just some of our contact details. At the moment, there's nobody in the office. We're all working from home, but we can be contacted by email after this session today. If you've got any further questions, you can email us. The details are on the website. You can look up the graduate school anytime and email us, and we'll get back to you with your answers to your questions.
Brilliant, Hazel. Thanks very much.
I think that's what all happens.
What's that? That's us. Okay, so thanks very much, Hazel. So the next person we have is Dr. Archie Roy, and he's from the Career Service, and he's going to be able to give you some advice on how you get support from our Career Service within the university. So Archie, take it away.
Thank you, Michelle. Okay, I will just go into my share screen now, and okay, that's looking all right.
Yep, that's fine. You can see that.
Okay, right. Okay, good. So yes, I'm one of 8 careers managers at the University of Glasgow. Normally, we are based in the Fraser Building. Since March, I've been in the Fraser Building twice, once to clean my desk and once to pick up a laptop. But after the next few months, hopefully we'll be all back in situ again, and we're all working from home, and that's affecting how we deliver one-to-one services and other services as well, and I'll talk you through that. Let's just start with our website. That is designed to be very scrollable and clickable, whatever device you're using. So you should find it easy to navigate on your phone, on a tablet, laptop, desktop, and that shouldn't particularly matter. And it's designed to be quite intuitive. So sometimes what you're looking for will be on the home page. Sometimes it'll maybe be 1 or 2 clicks away. And the note at the top of that screen is just there to remind me to tell you that all our online services, our website stuff, our face-to-face services are available throughout your time as a student at the University of Glasgow, whether you're doing a PGT or a PhD, and all these services remain for up to 2 years after your graduation date. So it's not that there's a sudden cutoff when you graduate and you think, oh no, I've graduated, but unfortunately I can't use a career service anymore. All that is still available to you, and a lot of what we have on our website is also on open access anyway. So even beyond the 2-year cutoff, you'll be able to see a lot of our social media channels and a lot of our content on the website. You'll see at the foot of that screen that it says log into Glasgow Careers. That is a portal within our website, and you would go into that if you were looking for direct entry graduate jobs, or you wanted to book an appointment with a careers manager, and there's one or two other features within that. So when you can, just have a browse through our website if you haven't already done that. We have a further study dimension to it, just to mention that. We've got some resources on funding, also applying for postgrad study, personal statements, etc. So I suggest you have a browse through these resources as well. Let me just start with PhDs at Glasgow. These are often placed directly onto the University of Glasgow website. A good place to start is research opportunities, A to Z, and that's a simple A to Z of subjects. You can go into that for specific subjects. So for example, molecular pharmacology, and you'll see PhD opportunities within that, and also hints and tips and guidance about the application process, which is good. And then just to take you outside of Glasgow University, if you're interested in doing a wider search for PhD opportunities, Prospects is a good site. Prospects.ac.uk is the biggest graduate jobs portal for the UK, but there's a substantial postgrad study dimension to it. So to search for PhD opportunities beyond Glasgow, although it will also pick up some PhD opportunities within Glasgow, just click further study on the homepage tabs, and then you can search under specific subject areas like life sciences and what have you. You can also do bespoke searches. If there's something that you feel you might want to study for a PhD, you can actually put those search terms in and then do a search of opportunities on that basis. Also, Prospects gives you an overview of the main types of PhD. That I believe there's about 5 different routes now, and not all of them are offered by every university for every subject, of course, but the Prospects narratives and definitions of different types of PhD are quite useful if you want to compare and contrast different types of PhD delivery. Also, findaphd.com is useful. That often gives you thousands of PhD opportunities on the go, and it will pull in international opportunities as well as right across the UK. So another potentially useful resource. And also the main job site for academic jobs and administration jobs, student services jobs, is jobs.ac.uk. But there is also a PhD section within that. And if you go into that, you'll find some free downloadable handbooks on, well, there's one there called Should I Do a PhD? So that's a kind of overarching basic question to get a handle on. And there are others there to do with well, Hazel has spelled things out a bit anyway as to how the different years look in the PhD journey. But one or two of these booklets will go into that in some more detail as well. So what would you mainly be doing? What would your main activities be each year of the PhD program? Also, it can give you some heads up on funding opportunities. The main funding bodies tend to be the research councils and the universities themselves, but the resources on jobs.ac.uk will flag up some of the alternative funding bodies that might give a complete PhD funding package, like the Wellcome Trust, Cancer Research UK, the British Academy, etc. Okay, and then if you're looking internationally, I've mentioned some of the UK resources to have a look at, including Glasgow Uni's own website, but these would be the main sites if you're interested in Australia or the USA or Europe. Also, just bear in mind that with the timelines for applying to a PhD, they're not the same across the globe. So with America, for example, that there can be a longer application process and lead-in time. But the Fulbright Commission in London is very good with its advice and guidance to students based in the UK who are interested in looking at doing a PhD in America. Okay, and then obviously when we're doing one-to-one guidance with students, we include people's PhD applications. So just bear in mind that when you're working on an application, you can always run a draft past a careers manager. We can have a discussion about exactly what it is you're applying for. We can look at any published details about the PhD. We can look at how you're completing any of the documents that are required by the university, and we can often think of ways whereby you might enhance what you're saying as a candidate about yourself. If you're asked for an academic CV as part of your application, you could have a look at the examples on our website and also the examples on prospects. You can go beyond the usual social conventions with CVs up to a point. If you're putting together an academic CV, it can be a bit longer than one side or two sides. You might be pulling in more detail about the research skills that you've developed already, the major research projects that you've already completed. You may have some publications or poster presentations that you can put in as well. So 3 pages, for example, would not be unusual as a length of an initial academic CV. Also, we can give advice and guidance about interviews. That goes for PhD opportunities. It also goes for graduate programs and graduate jobs. We can sometimes simulate an academic interview or simulate an employer interview. So if you give us in advance enough details about the opportunity, we can run you through a practice interview, which to some extent will kind of mirror the real thing and then give you feedback about what you said and what your body language was like and so on. But with interviews for PhDs, they are a bit like interviews generally. So you're there to show your motivation, your enthusiasm, the qualities that George was telling you about earlier. You also don't have to be an expert in a PhD interview in the sense that you don't need to know at the interview what you will know after a year or two of doing the PhD. You just need to show your enthusiasm. You need to have an idea of what you want to do and be enthusiastic about it. And you need to be able to talk about your research skills and your research experience up to that point. Also, you may need to ask some genuine questions at the PhD interview because the published information on the PhD may only take you so far, and it's only through the interview that you might be able to get answers to genuine questions that you've got that will help you to make an informed decision about whether that PhD is right for you or not as the next stage in your career. So just bear in mind, we do have one-to-one career coaching sessions. All of these just now and in the months to come are by Zoom and sometimes telephone as well. You can book these up to 2 weeks in advance. And there's a kind of rolling program of appointments that go onto our system day by day. So if at any point you're looking for an appointment and they're all full, if you just check back, the following day, some more will have opened up. Also, just to say very quickly that as well as our website, we're very active through a lot of different social media channels. Anything that we need to get across to undergrads or postgrads quickly is going to go onto Facebook or Twitter. Some of these other channels are for more considered pieces that we work on for a period of time, like our blog. But if you're looking at our website, have a look at some of the channels as well and just get a feel for the flavor of careers information and guidance stuff that's coming out through those different channels. Okay, and I think that's it from me just now. I'll be staying around for any questions in due course. Thank you.
Thank you, Archie. That was really good. Okay, so now we come to the exciting bits. We come to the students, and I know Joyce is just waiting. She's bursting to give you her knowledge and her experience and expertise. And I know George, he's really, really proud. He's going to be, you know, giving her the old go for it, the big thumbs up. Okay, Joyce, if you want to take it away for your part and what you've got to, information you've got to impart to other students.
Okay, thank you. I will start to share my screen. So hello everyone, my name is Joyce and I'm a first year PhD student from George's lab. So today I will talk about a little bit about myself, own experience from a master student to a PhD student. So I will start a little bit about myself, my background. So I did my bachelor in China and London a long time ago, and then I moved to Glasgow, did my master here in clinical pharmacology, and then I stay in this unit and start my PhD 3.5 years ago in cardiovascular science, and now I'm at my final stage of my PhD. So I'm finishing up all the lab work, hopefully before Christmas, and then I will start right up, and then I will have my viva soon, hopefully in the next year at some point. So I want to also talk about a little bit about how is the difference between a taught degree masters and a PhD life. So first of all, it's different from the time, the length of the programs. So the master normally is a 1 year program, and then most of the time you are just taking lectures and doing tutorials and assignment. And in the end, you may have a 3 month length of a project, and then you can choose to stay in a wet lab to do some actual practical work, or you can do a literature review. But for PhD, it's about 3 to 4 years, and then most of us will doing just one main project, and then some of you may have some side project, but most of the time you spend on your main project. And then for me, I'm working on something called simulation of the beta 2 adrenergic receptor influence on cell signaling. It sounds complicated for the first time when I heard of this project, but after two or 3 years, you'll become the expert of your own project. So no one will know more than you about your project. So for this project, you will get an annual report to submit every year to tell your reviewers what you have done in this year, what progress you made on your project, and then mostly you need to do a presentation in front of the institute and then present your data, any progress or any troubleshooting in front of your peer colleagues, and then seek for advice. Also, it's a good opportunity to practice how you exchange your data with other people in the same field. And then in the end, after 3 years of lab work, we are supposed to write up all the work you have done in the past 3 years, and then you submit a big piece of your work. That's our thesis. And then in the end, you need to go through maybe a 3 to 4 hours viva to answer all the questions have been involved in your thesis. So that's how you can get your PhD degree. And then at the same time, you can also get multiple training. So if you're a wet lab based project, so that the first of all you will get trained for different experimental technique, and then after that, you once you get some data, you will be participate in conference doing either poster presentation or give a talk to show other people's data and then discuss with all the other peoples in your own field. And then also in the end, if you are lucky enough, you get a huge set of data, you might be have a chance to participate in publication of your research papers, and then that means that you get trained of your academic write-up. And at the same time, normally before the COVID, each lab will take summer school student, master project student, so you get the chance to train up other students to become the technique as good as you did. So the ultimate goal for this program is trying to train us to become an independent researcher. So after these 4 years, the supervisors and the units are looking forward to have an independent researcher. We can plan our own experiment and then come up with ideas to proceed the project. So that's the main difference between master's and PhD. So if you want to do a PhD, so the first of all, you need to start to look for one. As they mentioned before, so you can do either inside our unit, so you can obviously visit our official website, and then also we have other resources outside the unit. Like if you are in UK, you can go for the findaphd.com to look for different kind of PhD opportunities. mm, I'm keen to stay in this unit, so I just only go through our own website and trying to find something interesting me, and that's how I find George and then become one of his students. So for application, you need mainly two things. The first of all is the personal statement. So in this document, you mainly shows what is your research interest, like what you want to do to in your PhD project. It doesn't need to be very specific, but you need to have an interest. And then the other thing is you need to have a detailed CV, so shows how your educational level, and then mainly about your bachelor GPA, and then research experience. So there will be a good opportunities for the potential supervisors to know more about you before you start it. And then if you're lucky enough, you got a PhD offer, but the thing is you are unless you are rich enough to self-fund it, otherwise you need to find a scholarship to support you for your bench fee and your tuition fee and your life expense. So if you are staying in the unit, I think we have a website in a web page in our university website called scholarship and fundings. So basically that's a website that you can just type what kind of situation you are you an international student and what level study you are looking for, and they will come up with all the opportunities you can have to apply for a scholarship for yourself. And then they should have the details and the right direction you can go, and then what is the deadline and what kind of materials you need to submit for this scholarship. For myself, I'm funded by the China Scholarship Council, so they have all the details on the website. Um, and then it normally, so the main thing for this scholarship is you need to have an offer to apply for that. And it normally starts from March and take a whole month. They have a window for whole months to submit your application, and then they will announce the results at the end of May. So if you are going to apply for next year, so it's better you start to look for a supervisor, a program now. And then next, I want to give you some tips to survive from a PhD life. So first of all is trying to meet up with your supervisors regularly, weekly or daily. Now maybe not face to face, but trying to have a Zoom call with them, especially when you just start your PhD, because sometimes you might struggling to uh, describe your data and then you want some helps from a supervisor. They will be always the best option to go look for help. And then the second one is never to be afraid of asking help. So it's okay then if you ask someone like stupid questions. There's not always no stupid question to ask. It's always better to ask questions before you make something a mistake that will cost more time and more money to fix it. And also another thing is very important is to make your plan beforehand and wisely, especially if you are doing a lab-based project. So there are few things that you need to make plan. First of all, your daily experimental plan. So your supervisor is not going to tell you what you are going to do every day. They will just tell you, okay, we will need to get this and that done before a deadline. So you need to organize, plan what you are going to do by yourself, and then you want to make a really good plan. Otherwise, you'll be struggling all the time. And then also for all the PhD students, we need to have a 20 credit through our 3 years. So you need to take some courses to gain these credits. And then we have all the information in the handbook. And then you want to plan how you are going to take all these courses along these 3 years. And then the last is you want to have ahead of the plan of your further career, research career plan. What are you going to do after your PhD? Do you want to be still in academic as a postdoc, or do you want to become a lecturer, or you want to go to industrial? So it's always good to have a further plan beforehand, so you can do some research and then get prepared to be that. And the last but not the least is trying to be patient, because it's a 3 to 4 years program. You are not going to get everything worked in the first place. You might be struggling for the first few months, even the first half year, but you will eventually reach that. You'll get enough data for you to write up a thesis. And I want to share some of my experience as a PhD students in the end. So what is most important is work-life balance, and then trying to find a way to live with failures, because as I just said, that you will have experiment not working most of the time. Maybe 90% of the time is nothing working, but you're trying to learn something out of that not working experiment and then make it better next time. And then trying to find something to keep your spirit up and trying to relax and then release your pressure from not working experiments. For me, I like to traveling around. Of course, that's before the COVID. And then now you can maybe do some cooking and baking at home to release some stress if you find it is too harsh on yourself. And then thank you for your attention. And I want to take the opportunity to thank my supervisors, George Baillie and Dr. Delis Graham, to give the opportunity for being your students. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Joyce. That was lovely. Go you, George. Big thumbs up for you as well as a supervisor. Excellent. Okay, thanks everyone. Okay, the next person we have up is Peter. Peter, if you want to kick us off.
No problem. Can everybody see my screen okay, yeah?
Yep.
Okay, no worries. So my name is Peter. I'm a PhD student in the CRUK Beatson Institute here in Glasgow. And I'm briefly going to give a talk as to why I decided to do a PhD and now what my life is like since I've started doing it. So my background, as you can probably tell by my accent, I'm Irish. So I did a Bachelor of Science in Biotechnology in Galway in Ireland. So that's our famous student union bar on student Christmas. So realistically, during my undergrad, I spent more time there than I did in the library. And then in my third year, I was afforded a great opportunity where I did a 3-month Erasmus mobility placement in Valencia in Spain. And this was kind of where I realized that, okay, maybe I like this research, you know, I like working in a lab. I kind of like the collegiate atmosphere. But at the end of my undergraduate degree, we were kind of faced with an interesting proposition of something that we'd been working on. And we considered launching a startup from it. But I know personally, I very quickly learned that the business world wasn't for me. And it was a lot of talking to people looking for funding who don't necessarily know what you're talking about. And it was too far removed from the science. I then briefly flirted with industry. I did an industrial placement with a company, and again, kind of felt like after the 3 months, I wasn't really being challenged enough, and it had all become very routine. So I decided to do an MSc in cancer research in Galway. And then at the end of my master's, I was kind of again left with an interesting crossroads where the supervisor that I had done my research project with, I was applying for funding with him, and we were kind of having a little bit of difficulty getting funding, even though I had a supervisor who wanted to work with me. So I kind of decided that maybe it was best for me to, you know, take the path less traveled and push myself a little bit and see what else was available out there. So I saw the perfect project advertised. Now, what I mean by the perfect project wasn't necessarily that this is what I always wanted to work on and this is what I, you know, went to bed dreaming of. But what I more meant was the perfect project was, you know, it was a field that I was definitely very much interested in. The skills that were advertised in the placement were pretty much exactly what I wanted to gain from my PhD. And it was 4 years fully funded, which is always very beneficial, as then you don't have to worry about the subsequent funding applications. So what was the application process like? So there was an online application where you had to fill out personal statements, and then with CV and references. I was then fortunate enough to be called for a phone interview. And then the phone interview went okay. So I was then asked to come to Glasgow in person and to do a full interview, which comprised of a presentation. And then because of the way my project is set up, I actually have 3 supervisors. So I then had to interview with 3 separate supervisors in one day, which was great fun. And I'd also like to just give a little bit of advice that I was given before I came over to my interview, was that if somebody is calling you to interview, they probably think that your credentials are pretty good and they are more looking to see whether or not they're going to invest in you as a person. So it's quite important, you know, to really, you know, to try and make yourself come across well and come across as somebody that they would like to work with. Which I thought, you know, really focus on the personal element as well as the professional element. And of course, the most important thing is if you see a position advertised, contact the supervisor outside of the application, because they may be willing to talk to you, give you more information. And it also just kind of puts your name out there, you know, they may remember, and it shows that drive and that enthusiasm that's very important. So why do a PhD? Obviously, if you're doing it kind of just for status and title and because you want to be called a doctor, then I don't think that will really work, because you really do need to have a genuine interest, as it is, you don't have anybody telling you to do the work. It's all very self-motivated and you have to do it yourself. Try to pick a lab or a supervisor that suits you. You know, try and pick people that you can see yourself working with, because you're going to be spending a lot of hours in there over 3-4 years. So in my eyes, it would be preferable to at least do that with people that you fit in with and you get along with, and it makes your life a lot easier. And also, don't be afraid to chop and change field when you're applying for your PhD. Science skills are transferable. It's more about being able to show that, you know, you have sort of critical thought abilities and, you know, you're able to plan and move forward. So don't pigeonhole yourself too early. And if there is something different that you think you're up for the challenge, then definitely apply for it. So what's a PhD life like? It's hard, and this is kind of a multifaceted hardness, as it's intellectually challenging, as you're constantly, you know, pushing your knowledge and surrounding yourself with extremely intelligent people. But as Joyce kind of alluded to earlier, it's also emotionally very difficult, because 99% of what you do doesn't work. So you really need to be a kind of person that looks at the glass always as half full rather than half empty. And again, something that I found out mostly through my supervisor was that managing your time really is like the most important skill. So if you look at the academic avocado chart, where it just constantly seems like work, and, you know, the more hours you put in, the more you reap the rewards. But this isn't necessarily true, as learning to work smart as opposed to work hard can often be very important, particularly in the times we live in now with limited access to lab space. And then also the learning curve is extremely steep. I don't know why I put myself so high up this curve. I'm in the 3rd year of my PhD now, and you're constantly climbing up and slipping down this curve, but you do have the support network to get up there. So what do I actually do day to day? I'm quite lucky in the fact that I and it's something as well that I would recommend, is to try and learn as many, if it's a lab-based project, learn as many lab-based techniques as you can, as if you're constantly doing the same thing over and over again, you will get bored. So I do everything from RNA work and next generation sequencing to immunofluorescence microscopy to Western blots. And then in addition to that, I also panic and scream and have existential crises almost weekly. So again, that's perfectly normal. And then what do I actually do, or try to at least? So the main reason I picked my project was because I knew for a while that I wanted to work in bioinformatics and not just in wet lab biology. So I kind of decided, you know, this is the last degree qualification that I'm going to do, so I may as well pursue this interest now. And this has been really challenging because it was essentially a brand new set of skills that I decided to learn. But again, you're not on your own for these things. I was fortunate enough to be sent down to Cambridge to go on a course to learn how to do these things. And that was all funded by Cancer Research UK. So, you know, that was another brilliant opportunity. I got to meet researchers from all over the UK that were in a similar position to myself. And then the other thing that's very important to do is read papers and try and stay on top of the literature and on top of your reading, because you would be amazed how many good ideas you pull from other people's work, or, you know, asking a question in a slightly different method can often give you much better answers. So, you know, really do try and read. And then what's life like outside the lab? Well, this is probably the most atypical at the minute with the coronavirus, but hopefully that's coming to an end at some point in the near future. So what does your life entail outside of actual lab work and experiments? A lot of it is presenting your work and presenting your data, be it at, you know, institute-wide seminars or internally within your own lab or group meeting. You also attend seminars and talks from invited academics, which again is something that's really important to do, because, you know, you can often find jobs from these things if you see a lab that you might like to work in, or again, take ideas from your own research. And then probably one of the best aspects of working in academia is going to academic conferences and, you know, really getting to see world leaders talk about the stuff that you work on, you know, world leaders in their field, and then also you getting to present your work to them, which is intimidating, but it is actually really enjoyable because it really kind of puts things into perspective about how much you constantly have to learn and how long of a road it is. So lastly, I'd kind of like to just go through my PhD survival guide, or what I think is important to get through it. So firstly, it's a learning experience. Nobody expects you to know everything when you start or when you're applying. So, you know, make sure you're not afraid to ask questions. My supervisor always says to me that it's only a stupid question if you ask it twice. In other words, don't waste my time. But, you know, if you don't know the answer to something, just ask the question. It's so much easier. And really try and immerse yourself in, you know, the academic way of life and attend as many courses and conferences and stuff as you can. And then, you know, you will get to know whether or not it is for you quite quickly. Establish a support network, both at work and outside of work. So I have a group of friends in the lab that if I want to go and I've messed up an experiment, I need to go and have a coffee and de-stress for a few minutes, you know, I go and see them. But then I think it's also important, you know, if you can, to try and have an escape route away from the lab and have people, you know, you can just go to the cinema or go to the pub or go for a walk or whatever it is. Remember, what you're doing is really cool, and you're probably the only person in the world that knows as much about it as you do. And there is a reason it got funded. And lastly, always remember that you got there on merit and try not fall victim to imposter syndrome. And the reason that you were there is because you were the most suitable applicant and you do deserve to be there. So with that, I'm going to finish, and just if anyone has any questions, you feel free to reach out to me by email or in the Q&A.
Brilliant, thanks Peter, that was really interesting. Okay, next up we have, and this is the tongue twister name, hopefully I get this right here, Kostas Athanasiadis. Oh, I've done it wrong there again, haven't I? Kostas, if you can introduce yourself then.
It's all good. Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can hear you and we can see your slides, thanks.
Perfect. Hello everyone, my name is Kostis, I'm from Greece. And I studied biochemistry and biotechnology back in Greece, and I came here in Glasgow to do my master's on biotechnology and management. Currently, I'm a second-year PhD student on Cardiovascular Lab, And my project is on plant science. Basically, if you see these two beautiful plants there, that's actually one plant in different cycle moments. I do cool stuff with pretty flowers. That's how I resume my PhD to people out of science, to be honest. And I was in your place 2 years ago when you were master students now, either undergrads. I was some years ago earlier. So how is a PhD different? I know that everyone, and I imagine that everyone spoke already about some stuff, so I keep it shorter. You are independent researchers, which means that you are responsible for yourself. You aren't a master student or undergrad. You don't have a supervisor that guides you like you're in kindergarten. You have taken the independence and take it, how should I say that politely? Anyway, be a man of yourself or a woman of yourself. That's the truth. You have to be responsible and keep up with what happened in your field. It's your job now. It's not your supervisor, because you're not only for some months in this lab. You're gonna be there for 3 or 4 years. But the lab on the other side supports you in every way possible. For example, my supervisor got me a table computer for the lab so I can work in the lab, because I don't have a laptop. I only have a tower PC at home. Got us, most of us, a tablet so we can work better in the meetings and out of the lab as well. So it can be supported in the hardware, but also emotional support from other supervisor, other colleagues, PhD students, postdocs, participating in conferences. Before COVID, we have booked this beautiful conference in summer in Greece, in Crete, and then COVID came and ruined everything. But anyway, yes, we were all waiting for this conference, I think because it was in Crete, in Greece, in summer, not because of the topic, but anyway. And also she offers you opportunities to engage with the public about your research. Here in this photo, actually, it's from the Glasgow Science Festival. With the lab, we have developed in collaboration with other universities as well, a small, like a toy, we call it stoma toy, to teach about stomata in plants for children and younger generations, and an activity book, and also a small cube like you do for yourself, like for kids activities, and we present in schools, and we try to collaborate with STEM. So it gives you an opportunity to reach out to the world about science, not only be closed in your lab. Next, to be honest, to do a PhD, you have to be sure. A PhD is not only doing 1 year like a master's. It takes 3 or 4 years and demands commitment. It's the most important thing, to be committed. Also, there's no starting working days and hours. To be honest, there are some experiments, especially in our field of life sciences, of biosciences, that you may work weekends, you may work late at night, because some experiments need to be monitored 12 hours or 16 hours later. So it happens to be 3 o'clock in the night, or a Sunday or a Saturday afternoon, which is very frustrating. You'll be searchful and you will, feel pressured, let's call it like this, because it's always keep up. More work is keeping up with you, and it's chasing you. And studentship, if you have one, usually pay much less than industry. Let's be honest. It's just it's not that you're not getting by with it. It's enough and more than enough, but you get paid more in the private sector probably. And also there is a secret that both of the previous PhD students mentioned, that nothing goes according to plan. Nothing works ever. I think this GIF is the most realistic representation of a PhD student, how he goes from laugh to tears. What you should do, especially it's what I thought when I was doing this presentation, I thought about what I did. It was find a topic that you're really excited about. It's not a topic per se, because for example, in plants, when I was undergrad, I hated them. I really hated them. I didn't like them. I worked with insects as an undergrad. I worked in synthetic biology as a master's, and now I'm working with plants, but I'm working on the field I like, molecular biology and biotech, which is what I like. It's just in different organisms. Like Peter mentioned, science skills are transferable. So whatever is your background in science, if you can prove that you actually understand what's going on, it's not difficult to show up between different disciplinaries of science. Try to read about the topic before you make any decisions, because it's gonna be 3 or 4 years of your life, and it's gonna end soon, and you don't want to quit. Find someone who has a PhD student in a similar field, or has a PhD on a similar field, and bomb them with questions about what do you want to know. You have to ask. Don't be shy. It's about your future. And if you don't ask, how will you learn? I mean, Google doesn't offer everything. And almost everyone, sorry, I forgot how to English. Almost everyone mentioned find a PhD. I think it's the most easy to navigate page about finding funded PhDs or not funded. If you have to submit your own proposal, take your time to do it. It's not something you should do overnight. Something you should take your time and take advice how to do it. and form a clear question. A PhD is a clear question with a way, a pathway how to answer it. And search for supervisors and the funding availability that suits to you. As Joyce mentioned, there are specific scholarships either from the country you are, like China, or from the field you look, or the university. There are funding opportunities out there. If you are lucky to find a funded PhD, I was lucky enough. Peter mentioned that he was too. You are very, very lucky. You don't have to go this process of forming your own proposal. In the end, I have to mention that, although I haven't written that, or haven't written it in the presentation, that while you're a PhD student, you remain a student, and you have to remember that. Take advantage of the sport, take advantage of the societies, learn how to distress yourself. Don't forget that you are still a part of the university. For example, personally, I find it very useful that I participate in sports because it's how I distress myself. It's how I blow off some steam. Although now with Corona, it's difficult, unfortunately. But find ways also to keep yourself calm. Both of the previous speakers, of the PhD speakers, mentioning that you need to find ways to take your mind out of the lab work. Don't be 24 hours there because of 7 days a week, because you will not last long, trust me. You need to have your own personal time. That's it. Of course, I'll stay for any questions, and I hope I
Brilliant. Thanks, Kostas. That was really interesting. You flew through that one. Awesome. Okay, so the last PhD student we have is Lauren. Where's Lauren? She's disappeared. There she's there. Looking at a different picture there. Lauren, if you want to finish us off for the afternoon before Q&A at the end.
Okay. So I'm Lauren, and I am a second year PhD student over at the School of Veterinary Medicine. So I studied veterinary biosciences over at the vet school in Glasgow again. It's a course that's primarily geared towards understanding the science that underpins veterinary medicine. It was quite broad, but neuroscience was the subject that stood out to me the most because of how debilitating diseases can be that affect the nervous system. I really liked the way lecturers would use their own research to teach, and thought that research would be an interesting career to get into. I did a summer research project at the end of my second year and really enjoyed it. So I went to the Modern Research Institute in Edinburgh for my MSci year. When I returned to Glasgow for my final year project, I was definitely hooked on research and knew that I wanted to do a PhD next because I felt it would be a more supported route into research. I started looking for PhDs in my final year, but I didn't secure a PhD until about a year after graduation. I knew that I wanted to look at neurodegenerative diseases, but I tried to keep my eye on neuroscience projects in general. The project had to be funded, and ideally not in Scotland, just so that I could have a change of scenery. I didn't have any specific ideas in mind, so I mainly used findaphd.com, and I also went on to relevant charity websites to see if they had any projects on offer. When a project did look interesting, I researched it a bit, and then left it for a few weeks, depending on when the deadline was. And then if it still looked interesting, then I applied for it. I tried to keep an open mind, but I also wanted to make sure that it was going to be a project that I would enjoy doing for the next 3 to 5 years. I also was still in contact with previous supervisors and had been asking them for advice about people, places, and applications. I wrote a few emails to people that they had suggested, but unfortunately they didn't have any spaces at the time. I was also looking at jobs with short-term contracts that would allow me to gain some more new skills while I was trying to look. So I did end up sending quite a few PhD and job applications out and ended up with 5 interviews at the end of it. So the interviews had various layouts, but almost all of them required a presentation, usually about experience, but sometimes you had to read a specific paper and then present it or present the findings to a group of people. I asked for feedback from every unsuccessful interview, and for me, they always told me that it was because a successful candidate had more relevant experience than I did. Eventually, one of my old supervisors had a PhD come up in his lab, and it was in collaboration with other people from the vet school and the MVLS college. When I read the advertisement, I thought it was perfect because it was looking at a neurodegenerative disease in dogs, and it also has some similarities to a human disease. The only doubt I had about it was that it was in Scotland at the same place that I did my undergrad, but I knew that I was going to get on with my supervisors. It was funded through the vet school. It was a perfect topic, and it was at a Russell Group university. So I applied, I was interviewed, and then started the position last summer. So the first few months of the PhD were filled with reading, paperwork, lab training and courses. And having been out of the lab environment for a year, it did take me a while to get used to it again. And sometimes it felt that everything was going wrong and that everything I did was a mistake. And for quite a while, I had the mindset of, it's a PhD, it's meant to be hard, just get on with it. But after 6 months, I was really overwhelmed, and I felt like I was never going to cope with the workload or make any progress. I eventually discussed this with my supervisor, and they assured me that the progress was fine, and if there were any issues, then they would have told me about it by now. So after that, I did relax, and I started to get used to the lab work again, meaning that I could eventually get the exciting results that brought the kind of spark for research back again. I started to get more of an understanding of what we were actually trying to achieve with the project as the results came in. And I've also had so many opportunities throughout the MVLS college to present my research, both with and without results. I became a lab demonstrator and loved being able to help students understand the subject, and it's made me think about lecturing in the future, so I'll definitely be pursuing any kind of opportunities. COVID has obviously disrupted the project, but we have made a mitigation plan to try and make up for any lost lab time. But the pandemic has actually introduced some positives. So some international conferences have been moved online, and you might not have had the chance to go to them physically in normal times. So that's been quite good. And also there's just been a lot more awareness about mental health for everyone, never mind just PhD students. So to conclude, finding a PhD can be tricky and may involve a lot of rejection, but don't forget that you did manage to achieve your first degree or degrees. So if you really want to do a PhD, then don't give up. It can be hard to get feedback on applications, but always ask for feedback on interviews in case there's anything that you can improve on for the next ones. Think outside the box if you start to get nowhere with applications. So are there any short-term jobs that you could start to look into and try and develop your skills more? Don't be afraid to ask for advice from past supervisors or lecturers. And when you start a PhD, it can take you a while to settle in, but just be patient, talk to other PhD students, and especially speak to your supervisors. Finally, the pandemic has caused a lot of disruption, but a lot of positive changes are happening now as a result, so try to embrace them. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Lauren. Thank you very much. All right, okay, so now we can move on to the Q&A section, and Sarah is going to kick us off with reading out some of the questions that you guys actually wrote into us, which we requested. We wanted to know what was on your mind, what were the most important factors that you were thinking of. So Sarah's going to read the ones out that we received, because we've got the answers for those as well. And then afterwards we can go through the ones that you've actually sent in today as well. So some of the questions you're sending in just now might actually be answered coming up with Sarah and I as well. George is on hand to answer any questions. If you've got questions for the students as well, definitely ask us some. Put them in the Q&A box, not the chat box. The chat box is going to be for any links and any information for you that we can pass on to you. So Sarah, quite a lot of questions have been coming in with regards to funding, scholarships, that kind of thing, as you know. Do you want to start reading out maybe some of those? Because I think that's maybe the most important sort of things that people are really sort of asking for right now, and scholarships and things like that. So if you want to kick us off.
Yes, definitely. So I've tried to sort of move some of these questions into groups. So if I don't ask a question exactly the way you wrote it, hopefully I'm still going to cover it in a sort of different wording. So one of the questions that we had, just generally, like how do you apply for funds? What are the chances of getting funding? And I guess on a more practical level, average amount of money that you might be given to live on if you were granted a stipend, but how manageable is it to sort of do your PhD if you have funding and if it's sort of average? I don't know who to go to first. George looks like he's ready though. I don't know. Is that
generally speaking,
who's
it
best
depends.
to speak to first?
It generally depends where you get your funding from. I mean, the basic rate for UKRIs are around £17,000 a year to live on. But if you get into one of the welcome programs or a BHF funded program, then their stipends are slightly higher. So it depends on where you get your money from. But I mean, I don't know how easy it is to live on that. You'll have to ask the students.
Students, right, okay, who's jumping in? How easy is it to live off your stipend you get every year?
If I may, the stipend we get is not, for me, at least personally, I found it a very nice sum as money, but to be honest, it's not something that it's very good because you don't pay council tax, first of all. That's the first, and for me, it's very, very nice because I can afford living on my own. You don't pay tax, which is also a bonus. And you have all the student, how you call it in English when you have less prices. Anyway.
Oh, you have student discounts.
Discounts, yeah, sorry.
Yes.
I forgot how to English sometimes, sorry. You have student discounts in everything, so it's very convenient. But the money are good. Not industry good, but good.
And I suppose we did also have a question which was about applying for the funding. Like, do you have any tips for what that process is actually like? Is it kind of like applying for a PhD all over again when you're applying for funding, or what kind of things would they ask you?
Well, if I do, I'd just like to start with the Brexit situation, which is not helping. You know, EU students were classed as home students here until the end of this month. And then that's going to change, and we don't really know what the university is going to do yet. It still hasn't made a decision. So, you know, it was anyone from the EU could apply for any of the programs that were in Glasgow University, most of them. So that's changed. We don't really know what the university is going to do, but EU students will now be classed as international students after the end of the year, unfortunately. As I say, we'll find out what the university does. But there, you know, there's lots of places you can apply for funds, and the chances are, depends on where you apply. Some of them, the chances are higher than other ones. There's different places, depending on, you can get it from your government, you can get it from some of the awarding bodies, but there's a whole list. If you go into the scholarships page, there's a list. I don't really know what the percentage chances of you getting them are.
Perfect. And I think as well, we did have a specific question which was about SAAS, which we've checked that, and they don't offer PhD funding. It only goes up to masters, just in case the person who asked that specific question is watching. And we also have,
if you've got a disease specific area in mind, then there's loads of places that you can apply for money. Say you're interested in Alzheimer's, then you can go to Alzheimer's Research UK and get a supervisor who's got a link in there. Or the same with heart disease, you can, you know, try and get into, there's quite a few places. So there are charities that fund disease related research as well. You should look up if you've got a disease in mind.
Okay. And we did have questions as well about sort of the practicalities of applying for your PhD. So one a couple of people actually have asked about sort of gaps between your master's and your PhD. Is that a big issue? If you have, say, a year where you're doing something else, will it go against you in any way? Just look like it's a no.
No,
So that's good.
It doesn't, in many ways, I'd encourage people to take a year out and go and do something else, get some life experience before, because when you start a PhD, it's quite an intense training course. So yeah, that should not go against you. Absolutely not. We are
Okay. So
as Peter said, we're interested in if we think you're good enough with qualification wise, we're interested in your personality more than we are your qualifications.
that's great. So definitely possible to still look at these things even if you're a year or two out of your master's or possibly beyond. And we also had a question.
PhD students that are really of a huge variety of ages. Some people do the PhD quite late on in their career. So yeah.
Okay. That's definitely good to know. And we also had a question which was about sort of part-time remote PhDs, which I guess more and more people might be asking about remote, given a lot of people are working remotely now without possibly planning for it. So is there anywhere people can go for information on sort of remote PhDs, if that's an option for certain areas in the sciences? I don't know.
It's not an option at the moment that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Although with the COVID and everything being online, we're now doing all the vivas are online. The thesis submission is now online. And I was against all that, and it's worked like a dream. And so
Okay.
I think the next step will be remote PhDs, but it's something that we're still exploring at the moment.
So I guess, like Lauren was saying, maybe that's something almost good or different that will come out of COVID, but I guess we'll wait and see on that one. Okay, that's good to know. I just wanted to check in. I can see there's quite a lot of Q&As come up in here. I think we've answered this one where unfortunately EU citizens will be going to international fees rather than home after Brexit, which is the end of this month.
But the university may make provision. We're still
Okay.
to find out, so that's still up in the air. There's a big meeting next week, I think, so we should find out very soon about that.
Okay. What about start and end dates? So a lot of our students might currently be on their studies, or they might currently be on a master's, for example, which is now scheduled to end in November because of the COVID putting everything back. Traditionally, I guess a lot of PhDs start in September, is that right? So is that going to have an impact?
PhDs can start anytime. A lot of them do start in October, and it's good to get everyone in and do the induction and things like that. But our numbers creep up throughout the year. So we've got people who start in January, people start throughout the year. So there's no starting and finishing point for a PhD. You've got to do it within the 4 years, but they can start and finish at any time during the year.
Okay, so there's definitely flexibility there.
Yeah, we don't have people starting one
right,
degree before they finish another degree. You have to finish your master's before you start your PhD. As George says, the starting date of PhD can be flexible, but you cannot do 2 degrees at once.
Okay. Right. So we're also getting a few questions about sort of the requirements, I suppose, to get onto a PhD. Obviously, it's going to vary, I guess, depending on what you're looking at. But is there sort of a minimum requirement? Some students have been saying, if you as a 2-1 degree enough, is a merit at master's enough? Hazel's nodding, so that sounds good. But anything that you want to maybe chat about for the sort of requirements for a PhD?
No, generally speaking, it's a 2-1 if you come out your undergraduate, and a master's degree you'll get into PhD as long as it's a reasonable master's. That's right, Hazel.
Okay. And I think we've also had a few people concerned about research experience. So one attendee has said they don't have any research experience. Can they apply for a PhD? Another student has said that because they've just started their master's, they haven't sort of done the project yet, but can they apply for a PhD when they don't yet have that experience? And would you have any advice for people in that position?
both absolutely fine to apply for a PhD. And as Joyce said, the earlier you get into that, your mind that you want to do a PhD, then you need to take the time and find the right one. And it does, and then find the right funding, and it does take a while. It's not instant. So absolutely, if you've done a course where you haven't been in any lab work, that's absolutely fine. Remember, all of the masters this year, the wet projects were dry projects because of COVID. So they'll be just as valuable as the wet projects were. So absolutely. And even if you haven't, as we mentioned before, even if you haven't got expertise in a subject area, but you've decided that you want to do a PhD in a different subject area, if your qualifications are good and your temperament and your personality and you show enthusiasm, then you can get a PhD in a very different subject area, because it is a training course, and you will learn a lot in the first year, general stuff, and then you'll specialise and specialise. So yeah, because it's so long, you get a long time to develop. So it's yeah. So just apply for what you're interested in. That's the number one thing. You've really got to love it. You really want to get out of bed to do it in the morning. That's the number one thing.
Perfect. I'm just having a little scan through, because I remember that someone posted a question here that they said was for Archie.
Yep.
So and there's another one that's just come in that I thought might be one for Archie as well. So I guess we can start with that one. It was, are there tips that you would recommend with regards to writing a personal statement and academic CV? I know you've obviously given lots of resources that people can look to, but I suppose, is there anything else you wanted to add to that about?
Yes, I would say these are just resources rather than templates. So you shouldn't slavishly follow an example or a template. These are really just ideas with some formatting, but there are some rules of thumb that are kind of built in. So with an academic CV, it's very important to front load it with your academic experience and research experience. Also, what you offer in addition to the academic community. So, a lot of PhD students do part-time lab demoing, teaching of undergraduates. So if you've already got some teaching or tutoring experience, that's good to put in. So it's also about you as a good all-round candidate for academic life in that particular school or college, and teaching is part of that. With a personal statement, it's kind of a mix of your skills and relevant experience, your research background, your motivation, why you're interested in a particular PhD area, but also the institution that you're applying to. And it's also good, I feel, to put in something about kind of your mid-term career objectives. So why do you want to do a PhD in relation to what you might want to do after that? And of course, you don't need to be ultra specific about that, because as you experience a PhD, your ideas are likely to change a bit, but it's still good, I think, just to put in something that's more long-term motivationally, just to give academics a steer on that.
I think that's very, very important. Sell a vision of what you want to do and where you want to go, because you're up against a lot of people. You will be amazed at the number of personal statements I read that say, oh, I just really want to do research. I really want to do something in the lab. That's not a reason to do a PhD. You need to sell a journey. Why are you interested in the area? And where do you want to go once you've been trained by this great university? That's what you need to. Archie's exactly right.
Okay, and I think, Archie, we've had one more for you as well, just come in about the practicalities of booking a careers appointment. It looks like it's quite busy in the portal. You mentioned that there's more every morning. Can you see the question? Sorry, I'll stop reading it out if you can see it.
Well, I saw a question at some point which was about can you book a career coaching appointment for revising a personal statement? So I saw that one maybe about 20 minutes ago. So I'll try and answer that, and then go into the appointment system a bit more. So yes, career coaching is a very loose general term, and we have all sorts of conversations that all come under the heading of career coaching, and sometimes it's about postgrad options or career areas, or cluelessness, dare I say, that some people just don't have a clue even now what they want to do. So can we help? So all that's fine, but also anything to do with the selection and recruitment and application process is also fine. That's all just under the general heading. I would say that we do track unmet demand just because of the technology we have in place now. So we can actually see where there are pressure points with demand. So we can see students trying to get appointments and they're unsuccessful on that occasion. That goes into the metrics. And we do try and respond to that. But also if you're trying repeatedly to get an appointment and they are all just full up, I would maybe approach the admin team or even email a careers manager directly, and we can sort something out.
Okay. Do you know what the contact is for that? I'm not sure is there a general careers email address?
I would just put an admin at careers.glasgow.ac.uk.
Perfect. Okay, I'll make a note of that and we can put that in the chat.
Oh, I think that's wrong.
Oh, that doesn't
So
look
I
right.
think
No, I know. I've just seen that myself. I've not done that right. It was admin.careers.
Yes.
Okay. There we go. So for everyone, it should be the second one, not the first one.
so I can see that we've had a question which is about scheduled PhD programs with short placements. I'm not entirely sure. Do you know about these, George? Because I'm not sure you know about this. That's fine. I wasn't sure if it might be best to recommend that person get in touch with the contact on the page about that. But
well, the MVLS DTP is a college-funded doctoral training program which has 2 placements. They are placements actually in different labs within the college. We also have the industrial placement PhD, which is a PhD scheme in conjunction with industry, and they offer a placement in an industrial environment. And we also have a thing called iCase PhDs, which are funded by the Medical Research Council, and again they're in conjunction with industry, and they have a 3-month industrial placement. So a rotation is a good thing because you learn more skills, and a placement in industry is particularly, well, there's many skills you can pick up from that, but it's particularly useful if you plan to go into industry after you do your PhD.
okay, and so is that likely to be flexible around the quoted start dates given of September and October?
We have on occasion extended start dates for people depending on the circumstances. Yeah, so if it's
it'd be worth getting in touch.
Illness,
yeah.
If you get on the selecting the shortlist and you get selected, then that's the point at which you would ask that question.
Okay. And can international students get a fully funded PhD program in the university?
Silence. I think that was sort of covered with the Brexit answer. It's just a little bit.
Yeah, it's
right
difficult.
That's
it's
still
difficult.
Right. Okay.
There are some, UKRI funded PhDs are now allowed 30% international students on them, and so we're allowed to take 30% overseas students on PhD positions funded by UKRI, and that means that we'll have to find the difference between the home and the EU fees. So we have MRC funded PhD places that are being advertised at the moment, and a third of them will be open to I'll be allowed to take a third international students. There's also things like the Wellcome Trust PhD in molecular parasitology, and they do take international students as well. I think we've got a couple of African students on it per year, and I think they're allowed a certain percentage international students. So yeah, there are some, but they're limited.
Okay. So just before, I know we're running really short on time now, but I wanted to also ask, we had so many questions about just more generally, how best to prepare yourselves as an honours student or as a master's student for going into a PhD, how to be a better candidate. And I thought that this might be a good question, partly for George, but also for our students who've already given a lot of advice. But I suppose if there was, you know, anything, if you had someone in front of you saying, what would you recommend doing whilst you're in this position in your master's that would maybe help you make a difference? I wondered if it might be good to just go round our students one last
I'll
time
say
and
one
see if you
thing,
had any
one
tips
thing
on
before the
that.
students go. I'm not going to steal their thunder. Get to
Yeah.
know,
No, go for it.
get to know the supervisors.
Okay.
Get to know the supervisors.
You
Yep, that's what we always recommend anyway when people are emailing
go
in.
to
Is
the
to
lab and you get a meeting with the
contact them.
supervisor and you find a report. Yeah, that's what I'd say. But I'm sure the students will give you different advice.
Okay.
I was actually cheeky enough to ask my supervisor in a phone call what she was going to ask me in the official interview, which turned out to be very beneficial. I wouldn't recommend, but she quite liked it. So it kind of, but what George said about building up the rapport, because if you're being called to interview, the chances are your credentials are good enough. So really try and impress them personally, I think is kind of very important. And then more generally, try and focus on experiences versus grades, I think, because everybody that's applying is going to have a good grade. Whereas if you have kind of relevant experience or something that shows that you're interested, it kind of puts you above everybody else. But that's just what I think.
No, that's great. Do any of our other students want to offer any last minute tips for students who might be just at the end of their undergraduate or just starting their masters? I think that's where most of our viewers are at just now.
I was gonna say, sometimes it's good to have like physical copies of your work that you've done, you know, like summer project write-ups and stuff like that. Sometimes I found in interviews they were really interested if they could see your results, like graphs and pictures if it was relevant. So like as you go along, maybe just like if you've done a summer project in your first year and you're just about to go and like start applying for PhDs, I would maybe kind of try and like update it in terms of like the language that you're using, like make sure, you know, you're not changing anything that's in there apart from just making it more like, I don't know, more at your level that you're at now, if that makes sense. Like I find that helps, but I don't know if that's relevant. But.
Yeah, no, that sounds helpful.
If I can say something about the interview, since it was mentioned twice, is that when you're going to interview, you will have studied about your topic and try to prepare yourself about questions. But don't be afraid to say that you don't know something. It's better to say that, you know what, I don't know that, and maybe it's your fault, maybe it's not, because something very, very focused and specific, but trying to guess an answer and make yourself sound really, really, I don't want to say stupid, but it's the only word that comes to mind. It's worse, I think, at least my personal opinion. And from different interviews I had, not only for PhD in general, that if you don't know something, be honest and say, I don't know, I will read about it and I can come back to you. But although you should have been prepared better, but trying to guess an answer and go out of the way completely, it's even worse in the eyes, I think, for a supervisor. But that's my personal experience as an interviewee.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. So just to finish off,
Joyce was going to say something.
Oh, sorry, Joyce. Thought we were finishing there.
No,
My
we've got
tips
more.
will be like if you already decided to go with this supervisor for a PhD, it's also good that you can, if it's okay, then you can do a master project with him or her, your potential supervisor, so you can check on the whole lab environment, and then you can see if you get along with the whole team, so that you will know if you are going to be happy in this group, so that you have like expectation of your in the future 3 or 4 years life, how it's going to look. Otherwise, if like you finding yourself is struggling in this area or in this group, it's not too late to reject the offer or make some changes. So it might be also a good opportunity to do that. And then you can ask them, and the supervisors, they tend to prefer that you have short-term project with them, so they can also check how your level is, and then they can make a better plan for you, and then you will be a step ahead before other people. So that's my tips.
Perfect.
Okay, so is that us finishing off?
I think so. I think we probably haven't managed to get through all of the questions because there were a lot, but I think, Michelle, I don't want to get you in trouble here, but are you okay to maybe receive, if there's any burning questions that people have, we can sort of take them and then direct them to the right person to.
Yeah,
to
no, that's fine. I will put my email address in to the chat box.
You can, any you think I can answer, Michelle, I'm happy to do that.
Cool.ac.uk. All right, and just quickly before we go, I know there were a couple of questions in with regards to the Centre for Virus Research PhD positions and the British Heart Foundation's 4-year programme. So I've just put the links into the webinar chat because we're now taking applications for the CVR programs, which is great. And by the end of this week, we should have the British Heart Foundation, BHF, the 4-year programme link should be on Find a PhD by the end of this week, hopefully as well. So there's more opportunities for you to apply for PhDs if you want to have a look at those. So there's quite a lot going on this year, actually. Okay, so we shall finish off there, and I want to just give a huge thank you to all of our panelists for just taking the time out of your day to come and give advice, information, thoughts in your own heads with regards to your PhDs, the whole process from start to finish. It's been amazing. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks.
And thank you, everyone, to attendees.
Yeah, I'd like to thank you, Michelle, and Sarah for setting this up, and Hazel, because that's great, and hopefully it will direct some of these great students towards us.
Brilliant, I know. Okay.
Please
all right,
get in touch.
So, yeah. Any questions? Give me an email and I can pass them on to either the graduate school admissions, on to George, and we'll say goodbye from there. Thank you, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Take care. Bye now.
Thank you.